We're in chapter 8 of Revelations. Now, remember the reason Jesus told his disciples about the end times was so that they would know when they started seeing these things not to get discouraged. And the added thing is um, you need to endure is the word he used. Endure to the end. Stick with it. Don't let these things disparage you. Don't get worried about it. These are the things you're going to see. Again, when I was a kid in the 70s, everyone thought the rapture could happen at any time. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. Okay, the wars we had in the 70s, well, there were still some in the 60s there coming into the 70s, but the wars we had in the 70s are nothing like the wars we're talking about today, right? Russia invaded Crimea, China and Taiwan. I mean, there's just stuff everywhere. Um, so the encouragement is to endure because God's got this. Jesus said, here's some signs you're going to see. Don't worry. This all has to happen before I rule and reign on the earth. So chapter 8, we had just ended with the sixth seal in chapter 6, actually. Chapter 7 was kind of an interlude telling you about that last seal. So we get to chapter 8, the seventh seal and the golden censer. Now, I'm going to give you a little heads up. The seventh seal actually has two subsets of judgments coming out of it. It has a trumpet judgment and it has a bowl judgment. Okay? These judgments, they are separate. It's not a recap of the first six, because you're going to read it as we start getting into the chapter. And we're going to go, well, didn't he do something like that back in chapter 4 or 5? I mean, back in chapter 5 or chapter 6? It sounds similar, but it's not. These are separate. And it's still all part of this seventh seal. Okay? But it's individual judgments. So that's just a little, keep that in mind as we get into the next few chapters. We will still be in the seventh seal, even though you're going to hear about trumpets and bowls. All right? So 8 chapter 1. When the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Now, if you get a gift and you open it up and there's silence, what can that mean? Huh? It wasn't any good? It was a terrible gift? How dare you? Shock, usually, right? If I open it and I say, oh, right? When you got on one knee and you had that little box and she opened it and it was a cell phone instead of a ring, right? We wouldn't do that because there weren't cell phones back then. If I gave my wife a cell phone, they didn't even have cell phones that I could give her. But it would have been a bag, right? That was the first one you really could have given her. Here, here, wife, here's a bag. But there's a shock. And that's what happens here. For a half hour, what they see, and like I already told you, there's 7 and 7 still coming on this seventh seal. Just the amount of it brought shock and amazement, and for a half hour, everyone in heaven in front of the throne was quiet. Then I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer. And he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of the saints on the golden altar before the throne. Now, what's a censer? Person that decides what comes on TV. If you're a Catholic, you probably know what a censer is. So, in the temple, what they would use a censer for, and they were made out of brass until Solomon built the temple, and then he made it out of gold. These censers actually didn't just carry, this wasn't necessarily for incense. They carried the coals from one altar to the other altar. So you would have this big brass, this big bowl, if you will. They would load the coals from the altar, and it would sit on this big, huge plate, and they would carry it to the other. Now, you need to understand that. It's not a bucket. It's going to show up here in a second. It would be a big, like an old car hubcap, just a big old moon-shaped. Those were called censers, and they would have the chains, because otherwise if you held on to it, you're going to burn your hand, all right? So that's what a censer is. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God in the hands of the angels. Okay, the saints are still praying. Do you remember back from the last chapter what they were praying about? Or 2 chapters ago. What were they praying about? Yeah, justice. How long till you avenge? You know, we had to lose our lives. We're under remember we see all the vision of them under the altar. How long until you make this straight? Verse 5. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and earthquakes. Now, if I told you there were going to be flashes of lightning, rumbling, and earthquakes, what does that kind of describe? A volcano could be, absolutely. You know, there's a rumbling of the earth. You're going to see light and everything flash up, right? The sky is going to light up as it spews that stuff in the air. Then the sky is going to darken right after, because you're going to have this cloud that's just going to fall over everything. Now, the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to blow them. Now, these trumpets, this isn't the same type of trumpeters that call us home to glory. Okay, this is a specific angel. These are judgments that are going to fall on the earth. Verse 7, the first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and those who were thrown upon the earth, were thrown upon the earth. Back to volcano, all right? Hail and fire mixed with blood. Volcano going to rain down that stuff? It doesn't say volcano. I'm just trying to tell you. Remember, the earth groans. Paul talked about it in Romans. The earth groans for redemption. It's tired of putting up with our sin and the effects that it has to take. As the volcanic activity, as the earth gets more and more ticked, if you will, and God pulls back that spirit of, the Holy Spirit used to hover over the face of the deep, right? Before creation. When that restraining spirit is gone, the earth, is going to retaliate. Notice what happens because of this. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Now, this is a specific judgment. Notice here, later we'll see it's different. But here, even the green grass is burned up. That's why we probably think it's probably a volcano. And it only affects a third of the world. Now, do we have volcanoes here in Oklahoma? No, I'm asking because I don't know. I know we got oil wells. We have volcanoes. Where are they? Further out west. So, however the diameter is around that volcano, if all of them decide to erupt, a third of the people are going to be affected by it. There you go. Yeah, but it's saying a third of the people are going to die. Now, is that a direct effect of lava flowing down a mountainside? We're seeing right now with COVID how side effects affect people, right? Well, it's aftermath, and it's all the effects. You're going to have this amazing display, but then you're going to have ash. It's going to mess with the atmosphere. The more particles you have in the air. Talk about hail. Well, yeah, you're messing with the atmospheric pressure. Food supply. No green grass. Who eats green grass? Deer, cows. Yeah. We can go on to everything. It's the beginning of our ecostructure, right? So a third of it's gone. Okay. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. So what is a great mountain being thrown into the sea? Star, meteor, or whatever you want to call it, right? See, Trump knew what he was doing when he established the Space Force, right? He must have read the Bible and knew, hey, here comes this big old ball of fire. It's probably a meteor, all right? And it says it hits the sea, and a third of the sea became like blood. Now, why would a third of the sea become like blood? Yeah, verse 9. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Now, have you ever cut a catfish or a crappie? Is there really that much blood? No. But we know from other types of water infestations that there is algae and there is other things that take over water that will make it turn red. So could this be blood? It could be. But it's probably a kind of algae that is going to make the sea uninhabitable, whether it's, I don't know, alien, yeah, whatever alien thing was on the rock. I don't know. But it's gonna kill things in the sea. It's gonna kill a third of the ships. Yeah, red tide. That was the term I couldn't remember from my studying. I probably should write better notes, but I just wrote in my Bible this time. Um, a third, this red tide kills things. Okay? So we know that it cannot just be blood, it can be an effect of other things from society. But, okay, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships. So we are taking away food supply, and we're taking away one of the key sources of life for anything that breathes and lives, and that's water. Right? Verse 10, the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven. There you go, Chris. There's your star. Blazing like a torch. What do you think that is? Comet. Blazing like a torch. That's all he could figure out in his mind. They didn't have a word comet. He saw this big thing like a star that was on fire, and behind it was more fire, looked like a torch. It's probably what we think of as a comet, okay? Blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of this star is wormwood. Now, more important than this star landing in the... How can one star take out a third of the waters? Well, it probably can't. But what comes after it here sure can. Because what does one river do? It filters into the next, doesn't it? So, the name of this star was wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. Now, wormwood was a bitter, poisonous substance that was derived from a root. And much like the drugs that people take today, this bitter, terrible substance can also be used for people to get high or get drunk. It had a psychotropic effect, if you will. So you'd have overdoses or whatever, but it would kill people. So this star, this asteroid that busts into wherever it busts, is going to turn a third of the freshwater system. We already had the seas being hit. It's going to turn the freshwater rivers that run through towns and run through farming ground or wherever it runs, it's going to turn them into basically poison. Okay? Verse 12. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. Now, a third of the sun was struck. How is that going to happen? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. John's telling you what he's seeing. He's seeing that the days are shorter, that the nights are shorter. There's probably something in the atmosphere. Is it an effect from these comets, from these asteroids? Is it an effect from the volcanoes? Probably. Because you're not just going to burn off a third of the sun, right? Well, but think about it. As the earth turns, I think, and the reason I'm talking about this is, again, what I've already talked to you about. I think what we're seeing is God pulling off the power of the Holy Spirit from just keeping the world under control, and he lets the earth have its havoc. You have back at man. I don't know how you block a third of the sun and a third of the stars, but I know when it's cloudy and part of the sky has a cloud in it, guess what I don't see? Right. So whether it's a cloud, if God pulls off his miracle in the heavens, again, getting to the end of chapter 9 and everyone's response, I think that there's going to be a way that people explain this away. And that's why, to me, hey, these volcanoes erupted, these clouds are covering the earth, we're not getting as much daylight, we're not getting, they're going to try and find a way to explain away God's judgment on the earth. That's just, yeah, just the rapture. Yeah, aliens are going to take everybody, and everyone's going to believe it, right? Everyone believes that wearing underwear over your face is going to keep you from getting sick, right? So they're going to believe that aliens took everybody. I, I, I mean, the cloth is even less than underwear that some of these masks are made out of. Come on, guys. So anyway, this they can fool people. And I really believe what we're reading here is nature and the earth. God is allowing it to say, okay, you show man how mad you are. I'm going to show man when I pull grace and I pull mercy back. Remember, this is the second half of the tribulation. Okay? This is that back half of it. A third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that a third of the light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. Now, if this was a true destruction of a third of the sun, a third of the moon, what would happen to the earth if something that devastated happening to the main magnetic or the main gravity-inducing planets in our solar system? What do you think is going to happen? We already know what happens when it's full moon with tides and stuff, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's going to happen truly if these things are split off by a third? Let's say a third of the sun just broke off. Okay, it's going to be cold, but the gravitational pull of the earth is going to be changed. Yeah, so, again, he gave us a sound mind. I'm not telling you exactly how it's going to work, but it's going to mess with stuff. Even just having the sun blocked, it's going to mess with how cold, how hot. At night, not see. What happens at night when you can't see the stars? No moon. No navigation. True. Well, I've got my phone. Well, what if phones don't work? You're, yeah. If you have a real cloudy day, your phone already kind of doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah, all these devastations on Earth is going to play havoc with Earth, especially if it's all solar and wind by this time. Just saying, think about it. If they go natural and this stuff happens, God's going to say, here you go. Verse 13, then I looked, we're at the end of chapter 8. Then I looked and heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead, woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. So, he's not just trying to have a catchphrase by saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's saying all this stuff that we just read, as bad as it is, it's now about to be 3 times worse. And remember, 3 times is just the trumpets. Granted, the last trumpet breaks in to 7 more bowls. But he's saying, you thought this was bad? Wait, here it comes some more. Chapter 9. Why an eagle? The eagle's not talked about anywhere else here. Why did he bring in the eagle into this? Any ideas? America. America's sitting back going, oh, you guys are in trouble. You should have founded one nation under God. Shame on you. No, an eagle's not a sign of peace. Eagles fly pretty darn high, though, right? They can see what's going on. They're going, hey, what you think you can see now isn't near as bad as what's coming. That's just my own take on it, because why would an eagle show up? Unless someone wants to find America. There it is. We're the eagle. We're the one telling everyone else. Too bad on you. I don't think that's it, though. Verse 9, and the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. Is this a literal star? Who do you think this cat is? There were the stars there, yeah, but I don't think that's this one. He was given the key to the bottomless pit, and he's about to actually cut it loose. Satan. Remember, he was one of the most brilliant angels. Fell like a star from someone so high. No, he does. Everyone thinks he's in hell. He's not in hell. Job told us that he goes, he's going back and give a report. He's still roaring around the earth, right? So this is probably a reference to Satan. Okay, now later here in this chapter, it's going to talk about someone, and we can't necessarily pin that down to Satan. But here it probably is. He gets the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. Okay, he opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions on the earth. Now, just because they use the term locust doesn't necessarily mean that it's a locust. Okay? Again, he's trying to describe what he's seeing. Do we have locusts in Oklahoma right now? Yeah, literal locusts. Or have they moved on to Texas? But they don't hang around. They migrate, don't they? So what he's probably seen is much like we have a locust season, much like Kansas has a locust season. Whether they're referring to grasshoppers or whatever insects that they want to refer to, he is seeing something that is traveling and he'll make it clear here in a little bit, that is traveling in a swarm, right? And it is migrating, doing damage. Okay? Locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. What do scorpions do? Just so we all, I thought you'd say glow in the dark, but yeah, they sting. Black light, yeah. No, they sting, okay? And it hurts. Does it kill you? And depends on how many times you get stung, right? But really their stinger just makes pain, okay? It inflicts pain. Verse 4, they were told not to harm the grass of the earth. This is different than the other one, right? When the volcano erupts, all the green grass is gone. This locust, again, back to what do locusts do? They eat green plants. These are told you can't mess with the earth, okay? At least for them, they're not given that power. It is restricted. You cannot mess with any green plant or any tree, all right? But only those people who do not have the seal of God on their forehead. Do locusts mess with people? As a general rule, not really. They're really more to tear up the land. So again, I think John is trying to give us a picture that what he's seeing, the best way he can describe them is locusts, and they have this tail somehow that's like a scorpion that they sting people, and it's going to bring pain on people, but it's not going to affect those that have the mark of the Lord on them. Now, it's not just the mark of God on their forehead. Remember, these 144,000 that have the mark of God on their forehead, they act also as evangelists, trying to tell as many people as will listen about the judgment that's here and about a God who's returning to judge the earth. So when we talk about the mark of God on their forehead, I don't know if when you talk about the mark of the beast being on some people's forehead, if you decline the mark of the beast, if they put a different mark on your forehead, and they now know you are marked non-believer, kind of like people wearing masks and not wearing masks. Well, apparently you don't believe in. Isn't it great? What do they tell you if you don't wear a mask? You don't believe in what? Who's the new God? Again, I'm not a conspiracy theory telling you if you wear a mask, you don't trust God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we are already seeing the groundwork being laid for people to worship creation versus the creator, for people to look for answers apart from God and his plan to man. We can fix this. We can rally. So what if the earthquakes happen? We can make food, right? We've got those replicators like in Star Trek, right? We'll just push a button and up will come Earl Grey tea, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but man's trying to fix himself, and God's going to show, hey, it's not going to affect this group of people. Whatever this is, if it truly is an insect, if it's something else, which we'll talk about here in a minute, they're not going to affect God's chosen people. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months. This right here is the only one we have a time frame on of how long it takes. These guys are given 5 months to wreak havoc on the earth. 5 months is not quite a half a year, right? Yeah, imagine getting stung by a scorpion every day for 5 months. For 5 months, but notice this, but not to kill them. You have these demons that have been, okay, talk about demons. If they were bad enough to be bound up in hell, talk about the demonic guy that when all those hundreds of demons were in there, they said, don't cast us to the pit. Send us to the pigs. Okay, so they know that they can be cast to a pit. So this is probably the worst of the worst. This is maximum security angel holding detention center. When they're released and they're given the command, you can't kill anybody, I'll bet they can bring a whole lot of hurt in their wake. They'll push those limits. The pain that will be here for 5 months. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. So John witnessed a stinging pain. Now, everyone has a response to a scorpion bite that's different, right? Usually there's some swelling, but usually there's some pain. And that stinging just doesn't go away. All right? Especially depending on the size. We already talked about the size and breed of the scorpion. Notice verse 6. This is how intense this pain is going to be from these scorpions or their sting. And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Well, how's that going to be, Scott? All I got to do is go grab a gun and I can take my life. I don't know how. I don't know what the methodology is. But when this happens, people will want to be dead and it won't come. That's a good point. Yeah, maybe the sting is a numbing, I feel the pain but I can't move. Yeah. This is going to stick for 5 months. Right? If I had to get stung by one of these suckers, I want to get stung on the 4th month on the 30th day, right? I don't know how long it lasts, but I know they're going to hang around for 5 months. And they're going to want to die and they won't be able to. The first glimpse of hell is given to many people. And yet, again, I'll remind you, the end of chapter 9. Well, let's just look at the verse. Verse 21, nor did they repent of their murderers or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts. All the pain, all the suffering they endure and see, they still do not repent. So we're at end of chapter 6. Someone help me remember that. Chapter 6, verse 6. And we'll get through the rest of because it's about time. We'll get through the rest of the chapter next week. Some interesting stuff about those locusts that will help you understand why I don't think they're literally insects. And we'll get into chapter 10 with the other things.